Welcome to RuralStrong, where we talk real challenges and bold solutions in rural economic development. I'm your host, Joe Barker. Let's get into it. Welcome to RuralStrong. This is your podcast host, Joe Barker, and we're coming to you today from the Southwest Tennessee Development District podcast studio in beautiful downtown Jackson, Tennessee. And as usual, on the first Monday of the month, our guests today are Becky McCray and Deb Brown. Ladies, good to have you with us again.
Great to be here.
Sure is.
Well, let's just jump right into it. I think today we're going to talk about rural job creation strategies. And, if I hear one thing over and over as I go into small towns is we just don't know how to begin. How do we create jobs in a rural community? All our young people are leaving. Woe is me. So is woe is me the correct term for rural job strategy, Becky?
It is not, because in all of our rural areas, we have the capacity to create jobs, especially working with our own people. And some of the best people to work with are our young people. And if they start a business and start hiring people in our town, they have a lot less reason that they might want to leave. And so we can help those folks become entrepreneurs. I know we've talked about our innovative rural business models in our previous month's episode. And those are great ways. If a kid starts a business inside of a tiny shed, they have a good reason to stay. And so we have to change the way that we support those entrepreneurs so that they can grow to the point that they're ready to create that next job. And these are jobs that do not leave your community, because the people who are already rooted in your community and have built on the success of their local culture and are part of what is going on, and they care about your local causes, they are so much less likely to move if someone offers better incentives somewhere else.
Yes, and we're going to talk about connecting entrepreneurs with each other and potential entrepreneurs too, and also with resources that helps them start growing their own business and creating jobs. So we're jumping right into, just like you are. I want to talk about stop with the official and formal training. I'm got my own little business I've started. I don't have 2 weeks to take an entrepreneur training 8 hours a day for 2 weeks. And I don't need to know about a tax commission workshop kind of thing. That's not what I need to know right now. So how can you best as a community serve me? I know, Becky, I'm going to have you jump in a little bit and tell your tech center story.
Absolutely. I actually got an email from a tech center that they were laying out how they were going to support local businesses to grow to the point they could hire. And the outline is full of things like owner's equity and calculating revenue to break even. And I remember thinking, I'm an experienced entrepreneur. I have hired people. I have run businesses with reasonable sized payrolls. And those are maybe not the terms I need to know in the first 6 weeks of being in business in order to get there. Really, the thing to focus on is that the nature of work is changing. The way that people hire others, the way that we create jobs has changed. But the way that we try to look for and support the people who are creating jobs has largely not kept up, especially as things are changing super fast over the past 5 years.
So you're saying the old way of doing things, we should not really get all wrapped up in that the way to create jobs is to be actually think innovative. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So some of the best things that can help entrepreneurs to start creating jobs are things like networking events and business fairs and business resource nights. This is how entrepreneurs get the answers they're looking for. There's some barrier that's holding them from moving from I'm self-employed to hiring that first person. And I can remember that stage when I ran my retail store, where I was to the point that I needed to hire my first real employees, and how much there was for me to learn, and how I called my friend with the SBDC to find answers, and how I was reaching out to people that had also hired. And I was trying to learn from mistakes I had seen other people make. And so that jump from just self-employed to that first employee was really hard. And then from there to the second employee was not as hard as that first step. So if you think about how can we get business owners to talk to each other so they can answer each other's questions? Oh, that's easy. Let me tell you. If we can let them have those kind of business fairs and networking nights and resource nights where they can sit down informally and just get that one question answered. I didn't need a 12-week training course. I needed somebody to help me understand just the few things I needed to know in order to make that first hire. And that's how I created my first job for someone else in my local community.
I had 3 women, all business owners. 2 had been in business for a while, a clothing store owner and an artist, actually, and she had her own pottery station as well. And they'd been in business for quite a number of years. And the new person in town was opening up a secondhand store, a really high-class kind of secondhand store. And she didn't have a whole big clue on how to even do a retail business, right? Well, the 3 of them got together after hours, Joe. This is what's so important. After hours, and they toured the clothing store, including the back room where she talked about how she orders product and how she makes decisions and what kind of software she uses. And they toured the pottery station, which is the whole artistic thing, and it's a different outlook altogether. And the new business got to have just her questions answered. How do you do this? What kind of hours do you have? When is this community busy? Those kind of questions that nobody hands you a sheet and said, here's your answers, or you don't learn it in formal training. And it made, first of all, it was great for all 3 of them. Great networking opportunity. They learned how to support each other as well, which is really important in a small town. But it also helped that new business be even more successful because she knew she had people she could talk to and ask questions of, and just the questions she needed answers to, and was able to then refer people to those businesses as well. That's a networking opportunity that any small town can do. Bring 3 people together and talk to each other.
You mentioned entrepreneurs like to be with other entrepreneurs. It's sort of like I've always said, economic developers, they have a language of their own, and they talk about experiences and they talk about their successes, and they also talk about their failures. If you have one of these networking events, I think there needs to be a mix there. You have your entrepreneurs. Who else should be in this networking event to help, I guess, spur the process?
Can we tell you 2 stories, one that worked and one that didn't? That'll answer that question really well.
Listen, I never argue with 2 ladies at one time, so we go right ahead.
We've got him, Deb. Do you want me to start with Entrepreneur Days?
I do, please.
Okay. So this is one of those don't do what I said, do what I say, not as I do. So back years ago, I got together with some friends and we put together some entrepreneur support events that had like that networking piece. And so we got a bunch of entrepreneurs to the tech centers. We did it in more than one town so we could reach more people. And we had, the Department of Commerce came out and shared all the programs they had. And the tax commission was there and shared all of the rules you need to follow. And we made sure it was in a location that was physically accessible. So we had those experts. And you kind of got to listen to their lectures. It was a very lecture-oriented event. So the role of the entrepreneurs was primarily to sit there and absorb the wisdom, which may not have been the best format because, first of all, you got to be able to come we did it during a weekday during business hours. Don't do what I did. Don't necessarily do it when they're going to be at work if they have a main job. And you needed you had to speak English fluently, and you had to be able to understand a bunch of business jargon on top of that. And then you got a chance at the very end, you could go around and ask some questions. And so while we helped some people and we had just as many entrepreneurs as we had experts, which the experts said, we're really surprised you have this many entrepreneurs. And I'm like, we should have had a lot more entrepreneurs than experts. So there were a lot of problems with that event. So that was kind of the old way structure, but Deb was part of an event that was a lot lower pressure.
And a lot more fun too. So it was called EntreBash, and we partnered with the University of Northern Iowa and had some fun with them. The chamber, we is the Chamber of Commerce, and it was a 3-county area. And we decided to hold it at the golf course. They had a huge club room and we held it there. And of course, I'm a huge believer, feed people and they'll come. So we did. And instead of formal lectures, what happened was we set up round tables and we had a resource at each table. So there was a lawyer, an accountant, a social media marketer, somebody from the Small Business Development Center, state tax agency, and of course the university. And you just went to the table where you needed help. You didn't have to go everywhere, and you went to that table and asked the questions you needed help with. And it was great networking. So they got to talk to each other, first of all, but they also got to talk to the resources where they needed that help. And then to close up the evening, we had a business that had started 5 years ago. And she got up and she talked about how she started, what worked, what didn't work. She just shared her story and was available for questions too. So they got to see a local person still in business and hear about her challenges and what she went through. So no lectures.
No lectures.
Very
it was
easy.
in the evening. You did it in the evening.
Yes.
But did you hear those other people that were there? There was a lawyer, there was an accountant, there was a marketer, as well as kind of the usual experts, like from the Business Development Center and the tax agency and the university.
And the chamber, yeah.
And the chamber, the darn chamber. Deb's the chamber in that case. So, but those other services that businesses need when they're starting, like lawyer and accountant and marketing, and those are some of the other people you want to bring into the mix on this as well. So you can see that the EntreBash was so much better designed for the needs of people who might be moving to that next step of hiring their first employee.
And it should be an easy sale to bring these other people in to meet with these entrepreneurs.
Absolutely.
Because
it absolutely
it
was.
means business to them, and particularly, if they could get on the ground floor of something that's really successful, man, that's really a win-win.
Right. And people that were ready to do business with them. They didn't have to talk to everybody, just those that were ready. That's huge too.
In a traditional pitch contest, we'll often see those kind of services added as a bonus service that's like a bonus on your prize. There might be some prize money, but we're also going to give you so much of a credit with, say, a marketer or a lawyer. But that may not be what you need when you win that prize. And so instead of saying whoever wins gets these services, this was, here are all the services. Sit down and meet with just the ones you need. So that way you're giving that targeted support straight to the businesses who need it most.
I was just sitting here thinking, which is dangerous on my part, for sure. But have you ever been involved or seen it happen where the educational system in a rural community gets involved in helping promote entrepreneurism in their community? I was just sitting here thinking that, for a junior or senior in high school that may be thinking about their future, and maybe be able to have a session on entrepreneurship and have successful entrepreneurs maybe come in and speak to these young people. What's your thoughts on that?
So I had the opportunity to attend the EntreEd Consortium Forum that was put on by the National Consortium for Entrepreneurship Education. And this has been several years ago, but there were such interesting points. And one of the most interesting questions was about schools who were looking for entrepreneurs to come and speak to their classes, and they were having trouble engaging them. Well, it turns out businesses are desperate for specific skills in their workforce. So this is the natural connection point to get those businesses involved. But there were also, there was a great program in Stafford, Kansas that I want to talk about. This is a town of about 5,000 people, and the school actually runs an entrepreneurship program not in the school building, but in the downtown where the students have equipment, like they have printing equipment and they have some small, what we would call kind of maker equipment, and they operate their own businesses. They connect with other real world business projects, and it's called the Seed Center, SEEDE. And that was in a downtown storefront in Stafford, Kansas. And I loved the idea of actually having the students running their own businesses and in the downtown and connecting with real businesses. When my nephew was in high school, he told me he was taking an entrepreneurship class. I said, "That's awesome. What are you doing?" He said, "Mostly we do spreadsheets." I was like, I really want him to start a business, right? Like I want him to start a real business. And that's what the students in the entrepreneurship program in Stafford were able to do. And there's plenty more examples like that. But that was one that I picked up at that conference.
I just talked to my friend Dan, who's an education consultant, and he was telling me that in Nebraska, and I believe it was the University of Nebraska, has a maker space that's available to anyone. But specifically, entrepreneurs can go and start making things there for their business until they get to the place where they can buy their own equipment. I thought, well, that's just a great investment from an education group into a community and entrepreneurs. I love it.
Yeah.
I'll get more details because that was just too exciting for me.
Deb, why don't you tell the story about the business owner mutual support that was in Webster City, Iowa, that you are aware of?
The 3 people that work together?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Be happy to. So there was a clothing store owner, 3 women, the clothing store owner and the pottery store, the artist and her pottery store, both had been in business for quite a number of years. And then a new business, which is a upscale secondhand store. And the 3 of them got together after hours. They were chamber members, so I was able to help bring them together. It was important to do it after they were closed. I think there was some wine involved, which kind of matters too. It's a little more casual. And so, for example, at the clothing store, they got to hear her talk about how she orders product and how she has to go to market a couple of times a year and the value that brings. She talked about the software she uses. They got to see the entire store. And then you go to the artist, which is a whole different kind of conversation. So she showed where she makes her pottery and who she sells to. And she talked about how she markets her things both locally and online. And the new business owner got to ask the questions, only the questions she wanted answers to. Things like, do later hours really matter? Do I need to be open later? Who are the shoppers here in town that are going to come support me? What should I be looking for? What marketing techniques are working for you? Those kind of on the side, I need to know these things before I open my doors kind of question. And not only were they able to help her, but they learned how to support each other as well. So when the time came to make referrals, if somebody came to the secondhand store looking for a piece of clothing, she could say, I don't have that, but go across the street. She might have what you need. I think you need to go talk to her. So having that learning how to support each other conversation was extremely important as well. And now they've built this networking relationship as well so that they can carry on these same kind of conversations with other entrepreneurs and businesses too.
Now, that's a story that you already told once.
He asked me to repeat it. Yeah,
I know.
Okay.
So I don't, pardon me for coming in here, but tell them about your group in Hampton, Iowa, because it's kind of a similar thing, but completely different.
Yes, Joe. Which might be what you were looking for, right?
Well, I think the story you told was worth telling twice. Okay. So now let's talk about Hampton, Iowa.
Thank you. Let's talk about Hampton. So Hampton's a town of about 4,000 people. And it was myself, I was doing at the time social media marketing, a couple of retail businesses downtown, the local pharmacy who also sold gifts, the local coffee shop that also sold sandwiches and stuff and gifts as well, and the local winery. We decided let's get together and figure out what is there anything we can do together? So again, there was wine involved. We went out to the winery after store hours, and just it was very casual conversation. We sat around, we shared what it is, what the kind of businesses that we have, and then we asked questions like, what was a challenge? What was, one of them, for example, was some of the retail businesses were selling the same products, and they were having this problem with three stores selling the same thing and the prices didn't all match. So they were able to talk through that and work through that and find a solution that worked for them. Competition is good. It's a small town of 4,000 people. They figured it out without coming to blows, which is important as well, right? They created some events. Let's create some retail events. What can we do as a group of businesses to bring people downtown to do all this shopping together? And they met, we met like every 4 or 5 weeks for a while, maybe a year and a half. And then we didn't meet anymore because we didn't need to. We had built those relationships. We could just go talk to each other now. We didn't kind of semi-formally need to come together that way. So you don't need to make these kind of opportunities permanent, right? Do them until they work, until they don't work anymore, or until they're not what you need anymore. And I love Hampton. They've got some really great retail stores that still work together today because they learn how to build this relationship with each other.
And I've gathered from our conversation today, one of the most important things, and really it's to be successful in anything, but especially in creating jobs in rural communities, is to develop relationships. It's a relationship business, and if you develop those relationships, I know in our organization, we're more successful with the more partners we can identify and create those relationships. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I think of economic developers, Joe, that are looking for that factory that's going to bring in 10 or 15 jobs. What if they just work with the local businesses and figured out how to add one job per business? How could that happen? And networking and building relationships and bringing more people into the community to shop helps you add more staff. That's the kind of way you get things done.
One specific example is Tony Guidros, who, when I met him, was with City of San Saba, Texas. He was director of economic development, population like 2,700 thereabouts. And when he started, he took his yellow legal pad and went around and just talked to people and talked to everybody he could in town. And he ended up with his notes and he realized, oh my gosh, I've got a lot of people who really want to start a business or they're running their business and they really want some help. And so he used that list that he came up with. He went to this small business development center and said, look at all these people who want your help. Can you come to San Saba? And they're like, sure, we can. So they came. The first night that they came, they had 22 people in attendance. They were floored. They'd never had more than 4 or 5 attend one of their events there. So then they started coming every 2 weeks. And over a year's time, they ended up by creating 13 new businesses and 88 new jobs because people were able to get their specific questions answered. But it only worked because Tony went out and built those relationships so that he knew how many people wanted this kind of help. He could use that as ammunition to bring the resources into his community. So he was connecting those people to each other. He was connecting to them, and he was connecting them to the exact resource that they needed.
One of you in our prep work for this session, and I'm interested to hear about this before we run out of time. What is the Doodle Academy?
The Doodle Lady. Let me tell you about the Doodle Lady. This is one of mine. So this is Elena Jennings from Ponca City, Oklahoma. Ponca City is like over 10,000 people, I think. So she runs a store called the Doodle Academy. This is I think she called it the art experience education business, which is like, come to my storefront. They do art experiences. You learn. It's educational for kids, but it's also fun for adults. So it's really one of those things that is as a local person creating an innovative business in her community. But there are several other business owners in the downtown that have arts related or event related businesses. And so they started a message group and they started sharing text messages with each other. So like when they read a good book that's teaching them something about business, they text their group text and go, I just read Slow Productivity. You should read this. And then they say, oh, here's something I just learned. I want to share it with my group. Hey, I'm doing an event on Saturday. Who can be part of this? Do you know a musician I can hire? So they are sharing in this group chat the exact kind of business development information we would love to see people share. And that's going to enable them to continue to succeed and grow their businesses. So that's the doodle lady, is Elena Jennings, Ponca City, Oklahoma.
And the group chat is manageable for each individual person because you just look at it when you have time. It's not like a phone call where you have to answer it, right? Or it's not a meeting where you have to go. But text messaging group chat just works on your schedule. That's what I liked about it.
Let me ask you this, and this will probably be our last discussion of this podcast, is as a community looks at creating jobs, how important it is that they do go through some planning process. It might be an asset-based planning process where, I think lots of times the people that live in a community, just like we talked about the artisans, they don't really know what all they have in their community because it's the old can't see the forest for the trees. How important is that asset-based planning, do you think?
I think it varies. And I think Deb will agree with me on this, depending on the size of your town. If you're 500 people, go try things. If you're 5,000, maybe sit down with a group and do some discussion and create your list of what your priorities are. If you're 50,000, you're going to need a plan. That's my take on it. Deb, what do you think?
Well, and, we talk about asset mapping and it makes my eyes cross. I am a huge believer in making the list of the things you have. Talk about the things you have. We don't need to know what stores are missing because everybody knows what those stores are. Let's talk about the things we have and share those businesses and those opportunities and bring people, locals, out of their houses to shop in their towns, but also bring visitors to the community as well, based on the things that you have. And stop worrying about what you don't have. It'll come. If somebody needs to start that business, it'll come.
One thing, this has been maybe 4 or 5 years ago, the state of Tennessee did, which I thought was very innovative. I think one of the things Tennessee is known for is their music. And what I think they found out, and we all knew, all of our communities have some really talented local musicians. And so they actually got into a program primarily working with the local chambers on promoting local music and bringing these people together. Because, when you get several local musicians together, you can draw a crowd. And then sometimes these folks end up in that restaurant or doing something else. So I thought it was really innovative that they identified something that we all know in Tennessee we have, but try to cultivate that. So it was just one of those things that I thought was pretty unique.
So,
yeah, we're going to share another set of stories with you too, because I think this is important. And when you plan local music, Becky, tell them what doesn't work.
Okay. I don't want to do, he said we're running out of time, so I don't want to go too long.
You're good.
But I want to throw this in for anyone who's thinking about trying to identify, if you're from Tennessee, then you already know it's music, and then also local culture, and maybe it's the people that make brooms. But for especially for small communities who are kind of struggling to figure out what their culture has that's unique to them. Sometimes we feel like we don't have any culture. I don't know what, maybe we don't have that kind of big identity like Tennessee has with music. There's a group called the Kansas Sampler Foundation, and they have a unique list of rural cultural elements. And so if you will look to the Kansas Sampler Foundation Rural Culture Elements, it'll walk you through these different parts of like business and arts, and one's commerce, one's food, one's your people, your history. So it'll help you to sit down and do almost like an asset mapping process, but simple enough that even a town of 500 people can do this to identify what's really special about your community. And so if you're struggling about trying to figure out what your special thing is, the Rural Cultural Elements from Kansas Sampler Foundation is a great place to go. And if you want us to tell the story of the tale of two concerts, we can tell it.
Tell the tale.
Okay, so I'll tell the first story. All right, so the first story is an agribusiness that is in a rural area. They do agritourism. And so they were doing concerts at the farm to try to bring people out to the farm to participate. And so what they did is they got some kind of big name people who had been on TV shows you've heard of, and they did these concerts, and then not very many people turned out. And so the owner's brother went on Facebook and is like, I don't know what's wrong with you. You people say there's nothing to do in this town, and then when we do put something on, you don't come see us. So I absolutely get that. So that's one concert. But Deb was part of a completely different concert setup that did get people to participate.
Absolutely. So a young man, Mike, came to my chamber office and said, Deb, we need to do some concerts in the park. And I'm like, you're right, Mike. That's great. Make that happen. And he said, what? I'm like, well, you can do that, because he was a musician. I'm like, why don't you make that happen? He said, but doesn't the chamber do that? And I'm like, no, I want you to do it. We'll support you. Well, we'll do a little marketing behind it, but get together with your friends and let's see what you can make happen, because he was a musician and knew musicians, and they figured it out. They made their own posters. They talked to the bank that had the location that they could play at that was in the park. They invited everybody they knew, as did we, and they turned it into an open mic. So their band, which was heavy metal, by the way, played the backup music for the open mic, and everybody from town came because it was an open mic. They knew they were going to hear Bill, who sang country music, and they were going to hear a poet that was local. People just showed up for the open mic. And of course, the band got to play a little bit later. A fella came from out of town, brought his lights so that they could play even later in the evening, and set up lights so there'd be lights for everybody. It's because the local musicians themselves were actively involved and got all their friends involved as well. So when you're planning events, when you're planning these kind of things, let the people plan them too. Don't have it all pre-planned where then your only choice is you come or you don't come. Make it so that you can be part of it too.
And you can apply this to your entrepreneur training and how you're trying to develop more jobs in your community, because when you let the entrepreneurs have a role in creating that with you, they'll help you create the kind of things that will help them the most. So don't rely on just what you've learned at conferences or what has worked in the past. Talk to those local entrepreneurs and let them help you plan it together.
All right, ladies, thanks so much for this discussion on rural job creation strategies. And I can tell our listeners, if you want to find out more about these ladies, I guarantee you, all you have to do is Google Becky McCray or Deb Brown or SaveYourTown, and it will give you a myriad of ways that you can find out more about these folks. Or you can email us here at RuralStrong at ruralstrong@gmail.com, and I can forward that on to our guests. Ladies, thank you again, and look forward to the next session.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us on Rural Strong. If you found this helpful, share it, and follow the show for more insights from rural leaders making a real difference. Until next time, stay rural strong.